47 hours. June 6, 1944, south of Tawi Tawi. The sea is black, thick, almost oily, with moonlight barely touching the surface. In these waters, submarines don't hunt destroyers. They hide from them. That's the rule. A U.S. submarine moves slowly beneath the surface. Slowly is not a choice. It's physics. Submerged, she can barely make 9 knots. A Japanese destroyer can do 35. One listens. The other hopes not to be heard. That usually doesn't end well. By early 1944, Japanese destroyers had already sunk more than a dozen American submarines. The reverse 0. Not one U.S. submarine had sunk a Japanese destroyer in active combat. That wasn't doctrine. That was math. When a destroyer finds you, you don't fight. You run. You dive deep, shut everything down, go quiet, and hope the depth charges are badly aimed. Tonight, this submarine is being hunted, not by one destroyer, but several. Sonar pings slam into the hull like a steady knock on a locked door. Depth charges are already waiting, lined up, neatly patient. Every man on board understands the situation. This is where submarines disappear. This is usually the moment when the story slows down. The boat dives. The crew holds its breath. Survival becomes a matter of luck. But tonight, someone decides not to follow the script. Instead of turning away, the commander turns in. Instead of diving deeper, he lines up the bow. Straight ahead, directly at the destroyer. According to every naval manual ever written, this is not bravery. It's a mistake. A submarine charging a destroyer is supposed to die quickly and quietly. That's how the rule works. At least that's how it worked. Until this moment in the dark water off Tawi Tawi, when one commander chose to do the single most foolish thing the textbook warned against. He attacked. To understand why what you just saw shouldn't work, you have to understand who owns this fight. And it isn't the submarine, it's the destroyer. Always has been. A submerged U.S. submarine moves at 8, maybe 9 knots if the engines are pushed. A Japanese destroyer can run at 30 to 35 without breaking a sweat. If the destroyer wants to close the distance, it will. If the submarine turns away, it gets overtaken. If it dives, the destroyer doesn't chase blindly. It listens. Sonar turns the ocean into a measuring tape. Ping after ping travels through the water, hits steel, and comes back with answers. Range. Bearing. Speed. Once contact is solid, the hunt becomes procedural. Not emotional. Procedural. If the destroyer confirms you're there, then the next step follows automatically. Depth charges. They don't need to hit you. They just need to get close enough. Pressure travels. Metal flexes. Valves fail. One mistake, one bad seal, and the ocean finishes the job. And if that somehow doesn't work, there's always the simplest solution of all. Ramming. A destroyer can survive that. A submarine usually can't. So the rule was clear. If you're detected, you don't fight. You disappear. You go deep. You shut down everything that makes noise. You creep along at 2 knots or less and wait. You wait for the destroyer to lose patience or run out of depth charges. Hope becomes a tactic. Not a good one, but the only one available. In this game, the hunted does not get to counterattack. That's why submarines avoided destroyers. They went after cargo ships, tankers, troop transports. Big targets. Slow targets. Poorly defended targets. Destroyers weren't prey. They were consequences. By 1944, Japan was losing destroyers faster than it wanted to admit. Protecting the fleet became an obsession. The answer was concentration. More escorts, more patrols, more steel in one place. Battleships, carriers, cruisers, and their destroyers gathered at Tawi Tawi, creating a defensive wall meant to be untouchable. From a strategic standpoint, it made perfect sense. If submarines were the threat, then surround everything with submarine killers. The entire system depended on one assumption: that submarines would keep running, that they would keep hiding. It did not account for the possibility that one of them would stop running altogether. The man giving the order is not loud. He doesn't pace. He doesn't raise his voice. He's been on enough patrols to know that noise rarely improves judgment. Experience has a way of sanding down theatrics. What remains is calculation. He has seen destroyers before. He has heard sonar pings echo through steel at 2 in the morning. He knows the math. He also knows that the math assumes one thing above all else that submarines run. His idea is simple enough to sound insane. You fire straight down the throat of an oncoming destroyer. Not a wide spread, not a hopeful angle. Straight ahead. Then you dive hard, fast, and deep, slipping beneath the destroyer's keel while the torpedoes close the distance. That's it. No clever variations. No safety margin. It's considered suicidal for a reason. If the torpedoes miss the destroyer, drops depth charges directly on your position. If you dive too early, you give away your depth and eat explosives. If you dive too late, you get rammed. There is no good timing, only less bad timing. The window is measured in seconds. Everyone in the control room understands this. Nobody needs it explained. This is not bravery. This is arithmetic played at close range. And yet the idea has a flaw in its favor. Destroyer captains expect submarines to flee. When a contact turns toward them instead of away, the brain hesitates. Turn left, turn right, maintain course. Fire guns. Those questions cost time, not minutes, seconds. At short range, seconds matter. A torpedo doesn't negotiate. Once it's running, it closes at over 40 knots. At 1,500 yards, there's barely time to react. By the time the destroyer realizes the submarine isn't running, the solution space has already collapsed. The commander watches the range tick down. 2,000 yards, 1,800, 16. Each number lands heavier than the last. This is the moment where Doctrine would say, break off. This is where training would insist on survival. He does nothing. The bow stays steady. The solution tightens. Somewhere ahead, a destroyer is charging confidently toward a submarine that is supposed to be running. It isn't. The periscope rises just enough to breathe. Through the narrow lens, the destroyer fills the frame, zigzagging as it charges in white water, peeling off her bow. She's moving fast, confident. The control room is tight, damp, and hot. Sweat beads on foreheads. Nobody wipes it away. Hands stay where they are. 3,000 yards. The destroyer's zigzag is textbook. 8 minutes between course changes. It's meant to spoil torpedo solutions, force mistakes. Tonight it only shortens the clock. The commander watches the pattern, then the range. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't wait for permission from Doctrine. 2,000 yards. This is where submarines usually turn away, where they dive, where they disappear, and hope the sea forgives them. He does neither. He orders the bow steadied. The boat responds slowly, like a heavy thought finally made up. Sonar pings grow sharper, louder, more confident. Somewhere above a destroyer, Captain is sure the submarine will break and run. It doesn't. 1,500 yards. The numbers come fast now. Each call lands harder than the last. Time to collision a little over a minute. There is no margin left. No clever angle. No backup plan. The torpedo solution tightens until it feels less like calculation and more like inevitability. 1,100 yards. Fire. The order is calm, almost casual. 3 torpedoes leave the tubes in sequence. Their departure felt more than heard. The submarine immediately pitches down. Hard. The bow drops, the stern rises, and the deck tilts, as if the ocean itself has leaned in to watch. Depth increases fast. Too fast to be comfortable. Exactly fast enough. 40 seconds. Then the world detonates. The first explosion hits amidships. The shockwave slams through steel. Lights shatter. Instruments jump. The second blast follows almost immediately, closer, heavier. Metal screams. Something loose crashes to the deck. Men grab handholds without being told. Nobody speaks. There's no need. The submarine steadies. The commander brings her back toward periscope depth, slower, now cautious. The lens breaks the surface again. Where the destroyer had been there is only debris. Oil spreads across the moonlit water in a widening stain. Broken planks, twisted metal. No ship, no zigzag, no hunt. The ocean has accepted the offering. For a moment, nothing happens. The control room holds still. Then breath returns. Someone laughs once, sharp and surprised, like they didn't mean to. It dies quickly. Nobody celebrates. They all know what this means. This wasn't luck. This wasn't an accident. A submarine has just charged a destroyer and lived. Radio traffic crackles later. A short report. Plain language. No adjectives. The message moves fast. Boat to boat. Crew to crew. By morning, everyone in the submarine force knows what happened. Not the details, just the fact. On the Japanese side, the reaction is immediate and very different. This was not supposed to happen. Destroyers hunt submarines. That's the order of things. Losing one is irritating. Losing one this way is offensive. It suggests a crack in the rules, and rules are what fleets run on. Orders go out. Aggression increases. Patrols tighten. More destroyers are tasked with finding the boat that dared to charge instead of flee. They are angry, and they should be. Because in that dark water, in less than a minute of closing distance and 40 seconds of running torpedoes, something fundamental has shifted. The old certainty is gone. The impossible has been replaced by something far more dangerous. The realization that it can be done. Night falls hard and complete. No moon. Heavy cloud cover. The kind of darkness pilots hate and submariners quietly appreciate. The boat surfaces to recharge batteries, engines rumbling just enough to remind everyone how exposed they are. This is the dangerous part. On the surface, the submarine is faster, but blind eyes in the sky love moments like this. Radar flickers. A contact appears. Single ship. Closing. Another one. The commander doesn't smile. He doesn't need to. This isn't courage anymore. It's a pattern. The attack comes fast. Surface speed pushed hard. Torpedoes away. The destroyer realizes what's happening and tries to ram. It's the oldest answer in the book. It's also late. The explosion snaps the night apart. The submarine dives before aircraft can arrive. In and out. Clean. By morning, the ocean is no longer quiet. Japanese patrols multiply. Aircraft sweep wider arcs. Destroyers fan out hunting with more urgency, less patience. The second kill doesn't bring relief. It tightens the noose. The third encounter comes hours later. 2 destroyers running a standard zigzag changing course every 8 minutes. Predictable, reliable, dangerous if you're careless. The commander waits, watches, counts. He doesn't need much. 30 seconds is enough. The turn comes. The window opens. Torpedoes run. One destroyer erupts and disappears. The other charges depth charges falling behind the submarine as it slips away. Shaken, but intact. The ocean feels smaller now. By the 4th day, the hunt has become crowded. Multiple destroyers, overlapping patrols. Sonar everywhere. The submarine waits in silence, letting the enemy's confidence do some of the work. When the moment comes, 3 torpedoes leave the tubes in tight sequence. 3 hits follow so close together, they sound like one long explosion. The target breaks apart and sinks in minutes. This time, escape is not clean. Depth charges rain down in long patterns. The hull shudders. Gauges jump. A minor leak appears, then stops. The crew works quietly, methodically, as if this is just another drill. After nearly an hour, the destroyers withdraw, either out of explosives or out of certainty. The submarine survives again. 4 destroyers. 4 days. No celebrations. No speeches. Just a growing understanding that something is very wrong for the other side. This is no longer an isolated incident. It's not luck. It's not bravado. It's proof. Proof that the defensive screen around the fleet isn't solid, that it can be pierced, that a submarine properly handled can turn hunters into targets. 4 ships in 4 days is not just a number. It's a signal. And signals travel fast. From the Japanese side, the numbers stop being abstract very quickly. This is no longer about 4 destroyers lost. It's about a calculation that no longer balances. If a single submarine can punch through a destroyer screen like this, then the anchorage itself is compromised. It doesn't matter how many ships are tied up inside the perimeter. If the perimeter leaks everything inside, it leaks too. That's the conclusion the staff officers reach quietly and without drama. Tawi Tawi was chosen for safety. Distance from American air power. Calm waters. Room to organize. Now it looks less like a shield and more like a trap. Staying put means waiting for the next torpedo report. And the next. That's not defense. That's hesitation. So the order is given. The fleet will move. Earlier than planned. It's not a retreat. It's described as a precaution. But precautions have consequences. Leaving early means reconnaissance aircraft don't have time to map the enemy. Carrier groups sail before formations are fully settled. Destroyers that should be screening are scattered across patrol zones. Fuel and supply ships lag behind. Nothing is broken. But nothing is optimal either. From the submarine's perspective, none of this is visible. There is no celebration when the fleet weighs anchor. No announcement over the radio. Just empty water where a concentration of power used to be. The impact shows itself later far away when 2 fleets finally meet in the Philippine Sea. One arrives prepared. The other arrives early, stretched and incomplete. That outcome begins here. Not with a carrier battle, but with a submarine forcing a timetable change. One boat didn't win a battle. It changed when the battle had to be fought. Up close, the submarine doesn't feel heroic at all. It feels tired. Fuel is gone faster than anyone likes to admit. Batteries need charging, and charging means surfacing. Surfacing means being seen. Every time the boat comes up, it's like clearing your throat in a silent room. You might get away with it, or you might invite company. The torpedo count drops quietly. Nobody announces it. Everyone knows. There's enough left for maybe one more clean attack. After that, the tubes are just steel pipes and hope. A submarine without torpedoes isn't a hunter. It's a thing trying to go home. The Japanese understand this too, even if they don't know the numbers. 1 destroyer stays on the scent. 90 minutes. No rush, just patience. The first depth charges come down wide, then closer again. 42 in total. Enough to turn nerves into wire. Inside, something breaks. A pipe cracks. A thin line of water sprays across the compartment. Not dramatic, just constant. Men move without speaking, tightening, patching, wiping. Silence isn't discipline here, it's survival. The hull flexes, gauges shake. Every explosion feels like a question. Is this the one it isn't? Not today. Eventually, the destroyer gives up. Maybe it runs out of charges. Maybe it runs out of certainty. Either way, it pulls off. The submarine stays deep for a long time after moving at 2 knots, barely breathing. When the order finally comes to head south, nobody argues. Speed drops. Fuel is conserved. The boat limps rather than sails. Victories don't feel light anymore. They feel expensive. The return trip takes 17 days. 17 days of listening for screws that aren't there. 17 days of watching gauges creep instead of move. 17 days of knowing that the enemy learned something during those 4 violent days and wondering what they learned. This is the part nobody puts in the headline. People remember the 4 days, the destroyers, the shock, the math that broke. They don't remember the cost. But the submarine does. It carries that cost all the way back to port, leaking, slightly moving, slowly alive. 4 days made history. The next 17 made sure the boat survived it. The story doesn't stay with one submarine for long. It can't. In wartime, nothing that works stays secret. Patrol reports circulate. Diagrams get redrawn. Firing solutions are copied, corrected, argued over. What began as one commander's gamble becomes a set of instructions passed quietly from boat to boat. The language changes. Destroyers are no longer to be avoided. They are described as engageable under conditions. That's how revolutions usually sound at first. Careful words, no celebration. Other crews try it. Some succeed. A destroyer disappears in a tight, violent exchange. The reports come back with familiar phrases: short range, head-on approach, minimal hesitation. It feels repeatable. It feels controllable. For a while it works. Enemy escorts fall faster than expected. Convoys thin out. Confidence grows cautiously. No one says it out loud, but everyone is thinking the same thing. If this keeps up, the sea lanes will break. That's when the other side starts learning. Japanese destroyer captains stop charging blindly. They turn away earlier. They slow, deliberately letting torpedoes pass ahead. They work in pairs, then in threes, forcing submarines to expose their sides instead of their bows. What was once surprise becomes anticipation. The success rate drops. Every tactic has a lifespan. This one burns brightly, then starts to cost more than it gives. Submarine losses rise. Boats that push too hard don't come back. The math changes again, and this time, it cuts both ways. Commanders are forced into a choice that never feels clean. Play it safe, return to older methods, sink fewer ships, but keep more crews alive. Or accept losses and keep the pressure on, because even imperfect attacks still disrupt shipping, still starve industry, still grind the enemy down. There is no correct answer, only priorities. The decision tilts toward aggression, not because it's elegant, but because it works often enough. Even as countermeasures improve, submarines are sinking more tonnage than ever before. Merchant ships vanish faster than escorts can adapt. The cost is real, but so is the effect. This is the dark side of innovation in war. Every breakthrough invites imitation. Every imitation invites a response, and every response is paid for in steel and lives. By the end of the campaign, the lesson is clear to everyone involved. The down-the-throat attack was never magic. It was timing, psychology, and surprise aligned just long enough to matter. And that's the rule underneath all the others. The best tactic in war doesn't live forever. It lives only until the enemy understands it. The final encounter doesn't announce itself. There is no build-up, no dramatic warning. It arrives the way most fatal mistakes do, quietly, and then all at once. Sonar contact comes in clean. Too clean. The escort ship doesn't hunt anymore. It tracks. The submarine reacts, instantly ordering a crash dive. Engines are still turning as the bow drops. For a few seconds, physics betrays them. Air rushes. The stern lags. On the surface, bubbles bloom and stretch into a pale scar across the water. A perfect signature. The kind escorts are trained to wait for. The first depth charges are already falling. They are not guesses. They are placed with confidence. Calculated depth. Correct spacing. The kind of pattern dropped by a crew that knows exactly what it is doing. The explosions arrive close enough to feel personal. The hull answers with a sharp crack, not catastrophic, not yet, but unmistakable. Water forces its way in through fractured steel. Valves slam shut, pumps kick on. Men move without shouting, without panic. Training takes over when fear becomes inefficient. The submarine fights to regain balance, blowing ballast in a last attempt to climb. She doesn't. The weight is wrong now. Too much water where air should be. The boat responds sluggishly like a wounded animal refusing to obey instinct. A second pattern follows. This one ends the argument. Pressure collapses compartments in sequence. Power dies. Light disappears. The submarine does not surface again. There are no survivors. News of the loss arrives later, stripped of detail. Presumed sunk. All hands lost. The war does not pause to mourn. It rarely does. Operations continue. Orders are updated. Lessons are absorbed. The ocean closes over the coordinates and keeps them. After the war, recognition comes in controlled doses. Medals are awarded. Citations are read aloud in calm rooms, far from saltwater and steel. Families are told what can be told. Much of the story remains classified, not out of secrecy, but out of habit. History waits its turn. Decades pass. When the wreck is finally found, it rests upright on the seabed, broken but recognizable. The pressure hull bears the scars exactly where the report said it would. No salvage follows. No attempt is made to disturb it. It is declared what it has always been, a war grave, a place where time stops. What remains is not the wreck itself, but the weight of what it represents. One submarine. 4 days. A decision that broke a rule everyone believed was permanent. The result was not victory in the simple sense. It was disruption, delay, confusion, a forced change in timing that rippled outward, touching fleets and battles far removed from that dark stretch of water. It also carried a price. Innovation in war is never clean. Every successful idea spreads. Every spread invites a counter. And every counter is paid for by people who believed they understood the risks. The tactic worked. Then it worked less. Then it cost lives. That is not failure. That is the full cost of learning under fire. The lesson left behind is uncomfortable, which is why it endures. When your enemy is certain you will run, sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is move forward. Not because it is safe, not because it guarantees success, but because it changes the equation long enough to matter. That choice does not make heroes immune to consequence. It only ensures their decisions echo beyond them. If you are watching this now from somewhere far removed from wartime seas, pause for a moment. Think about where you are. Think about the distance between this quiet room and that dark water. Perhaps someone in your family served. Perhaps they never spoke much about it. Perhaps they didn't come home at all. Stories like this do not survive because they are dramatic. They survive because someone decides they are worth remembering. And once remembered, they refuse to disappear.